What a game. Back to you. Thank you. As an applied anthropologist, my job is to make the known unknown and the unknown known. And the reason for this is that it's to help people understand things from different perspectives. And when people understand things from different perspectives, they have a better chance at making meaningful, relevant, useful, desirable products, services, and even organizational change. The people-centric approach is a mindset, not a methodology. You can use any methodology with it. It's a mindset. And I was thinking about how I wanted to express this to you, and I decided the best way was through my daily commute on a train. This is my train station. And this train station is 45 minutes outside of Oslo, in a place in English which would be called Rabbit Den, in Norwegian, Harestua. Is anyone here from Harestua? Nobody from Harestua. Well, there's only 2,000 people who live in Harestua. And I call these people forest elves. Nisser in Norwegian. And why I do this is because there's a very strange phenomenon there. They magically appear seconds before the train comes on the way to Oslo, and on the way home, they magically disappear into the forest. And if you look at this train station, it looks pretty deserted. It's in the middle of a forest. Except for one day. It was in May last year. It was pouring rain. It was incredibly cold, even colder than it is today here in Tromsø. And it was extremely windy. It was one of these awful storms. And as I was leaving the train station in my little red car, I noticed that there was still someone on the platform. And I looked closely, and it was a very old man who looked like he came from the 1950s. He was wearing a top hat, he was wearing a tuxedo-like black coat, and he had this huge instrument with him that I found out later was a balalaika. And he looked really confused. I thought maybe it was because they moved the train station. You know, he didn't know where he was. But I decided I would go and check up on him because I knew the next train wouldn't come for another hour, and I was worried. So I went over to him, got out of my car, walked over to him, and the first thing that happens is he says, "Are you the person who's going to pick me up?" And I said, "No, not really, but can I help you?" And he became very formal, and he said, "Well, I'm Dr. X, and I am the head surgeon at the National Hospital in Norway." And I thought, at that point, two things. I thought the first thing was, if that's true, then maybe that's what's wrong with the healthcare system in Norway. But on the other side, I thought, okay, he probably was this, but he's probably not it right now, so I need to help. So I said, "Well, how can I help you?" And he said, "Well, I'm here in Harestua because I'm here to meet my good friend, Mr. Z." And Mr. Z obviously hadn't shown up, so I said I would help him call. So I got my mobile phone out and looked for Mr. Z, and there was no Mr. Z, except there was one person with the same last name from Harestua. So I called that number, and I got a very, very upset man. And he was upset for two reasons. He knew Dr. X, and Dr. X was his father's best friend, but his father had been dead for 20 years. And the other issue was he wasn't in Harestua. He was another hour away in another city and wouldn't be getting back to Harestua until late at night. And I said, "Don't worry, I'll figure it out." So I did not want this man to stand for an hour in the cold waiting for the next train. And I also was concerned is, even if he did that, what happens when he gets back to Oslo? So I asked him if he would take a cup of coffee at my house, and he agreed to this. Complained a bit about being confused, but that he would do this. And this is when I had a bit of a problem, because that balalaik was bigger than my car. But I got him in, I got the balalaik in, everything went fine, got home, and I got him a cup of coffee and went to my bedroom, and I called the train service. I called Gjøvikbanen. And I said, I've got this problem. And I explained the situation, and they said, don't worry, just bring him back to the platform, seconds before the train comes, just like the rest of the forest elves, and we'll handle the rest. Meanwhile, as we were sipping our coffee, this other gentleman called back, the one who was the son of his friend, and said, don't worry, get him on that train, and when it comes to Oslo, I'll be there, and I'll meet him. So I was feeling pretty good about things. But here's where the most important part of the story comes. I took him back to the train station, and I'm standing in the cold with this man. Remember the wind and the cold, please, and the rain. And I see the train coming in, and it slows down, and the doors open, and 3 people come out. They're 2 conductors and the man who was driving the train. And they came up in full uniform with a little cap on, and they lined up, and they said, excuse me, sir, are you Dr. X? And he said, yes, I am. And they said, welcome on board the Gjøvikbanen. And the next person said, welcome on board the Gjøvikbanen. And the third person said, welcome on board the Gjøvikbanen. I have a cup of coffee ready for you when you get on board. That is the best way I can explain the people-centric approach to a service. I'm not done. And I love Gjøvikbanen. I love it for many reasons. One of the reasons is it's the time I have every day to connect to my work on the way into Oslo, and also to relax and leave work behind as I go back and travel back to my forest. On the train, I have train buddies. These are people, I have no idea what their names are, but we nod to each other, we smile to each other, and we chat together when we want. I didn't understand how important this train ride was for me until I had a very, very sad day in my life. And that particular day, I was wearing a yellow jacket. And the conductor came to me and said something, and I wasn't really paying attention. And the next thing you know, he is saying as loud as he can, congratulations to the best-dressed woman today. Let's all give her a hand. And I looked up, thinking, who's the best-dressed woman? And everybody was clapping and looking at me. And it really moved me, and it made me feel so much better because I had been seen that day. And it's really about attitudes and actions of the people who work on that train. And I'd like to give you a couple more of those. First of all, every single day, I know they are going to greet me. And sometimes, when they have time, they even have a chat. They do this with all the passengers. But they greet us every single day, every single passenger. And I take the train twice, so I get it twice. It's a very good idea to look very tired on this train. So if you go to the Gjøvikbanen, I suggest you do that. And the reason is, if they notice that you're tired, they actually come over to you and say, you know, you look a little tired. Let me give you a free cup of coffee. And I get a free cup of coffee. Thursdays are my favorite day because Thursday afternoon I get an SMS from my train service, and it's telling me which train on Friday, going from Oslo back to the village, has hot dogs and beer on it. And they've upgraded, so now I can choose between hot dogs, beer, and wine. This is totally true, and they changed the time so that different people can have the opportunity, and if you really want to be on the hot dog train, then you can just change your time. And when classes, lots of kids are going into the city on a field trip. Everybody knows in public transportation that can be very annoying, because the kids are all rowdy and they're all excited, and the teacher's stressed out, and everyone around is a little bit stressed out because maybe they don't want to be sitting with a bunch of rowdy kids. Well, this train service has solved this problem. What they do is they offer a service where the teacher gets a free cup of coffee and gets to relax, the kids get little iPads, and the conductor becomes the teacher on the way into Oslo and teaches them about the environment. I am not joking. But remember, it's really about the actions and attitudes of these people. And it wasn't always like this. So I want to tell you a little bit of history. In 2010, they were losing lots of money, and they got a new leader. At the time, customer satisfaction was at an all-time low. It was at 63 points out of 100. The new leader asked if he could have new train tracks. They were built in 1905. And it caused the trains to go very, very slowly. The answer was no. Well, then he scratched his head a little bit, and he said, well, I have to click this thing a lot. He asked, well, can we get new trains? Because they're 40 years old, and let me tell you, these trains are pretty worn down, the seats are ragged, and they stink. I'm convinced if we ever do get a new train, though, that we're going to want those little smelly things that smell just like the old trains, not the new ones. Convinced of it. But anyway, what do you think the answer was? No. And then he had a dilemma. What do I do now? But this man is naturally people-centric. And what he did was made his employees service heroes, and he empowered them to handle situations when they occurred. So when the train stopped because of technical difficulties, remember they're old trains, he allowed the employees to decide what to do. So if there was a really grumpy passenger who was screaming and frustrated because they had a meeting in Oslo, he gave them a little coupon, said, go on, go take a taxi. We've got it all arranged. We even called the taxi for you. If they see somebody helping another passenger on with a baby pram, hey, you know, we saw that. Here's a cup of coffee. And this is their attitude at all times. They're continuously looking at new ways to better the service on this train. And what do you think the effect was? Well, first of all, I need to talk. It says I only have 46 seconds. That can't be right. It said there's 3 types of heroes. There are those heroes that do that little extra, and there are potential heroes. Those are the people who have the great ideas but don't dare talk about them, either because they're afraid of their bosses or the other people who work there, or because they just don't care. And then there's the non-heroes. And the non-heroes are those people who make it difficult for the other employees and for the passengers of this airline. And this train. And one of the interesting things with that is that we often take those non-heroes and we pass them to all the divisions, right? So the whole organization gets to experience a non-hero. I don't know why we do that, but we do. What kind of hero are you? Well, the effect is that we love Gjøvikbanen. And that's because we have rituals. Whoa, it's moving all over the place now. We have rituals, and those rituals are important for the fabric of society. We feel safe and secure with them. They trust us, and we trust them. And we're accepted for who we are. And most importantly and of all, we have a sense of belongingness. And in a world, a shrinking world today, where we see the effects and experience the effects of globalization, the environment, healthcare issues, all of these different things that we feel on us every day, we need these things. We need to feel safe and secure, and we need to be seen. At the end of the day, they've made, in 2013, 35% more than ever before. And this continues on. They've continuously broken their record. And their customer satisfaction is up at 73. If you take away the damage to the trains, the fact that the seats are bad, they're over 90 out of 100 on customer satisfaction. It's always been about the people, our relationships to each other at an individual, group, societal, and even global level. And that is what the people-centric approach is about. Thank you.